Greetings, friends. You are on the Ruslan Belov channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine as of March 10th, 2025. Before we begin, I would sincerely like to ask you to subscribe to the channel. Your subscription helps support its growth. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed. A tremendous number of events have occurred today, so let's get started. We will continue from the Sujansky salient, where the armed forces of the Russian Federation are continuing their counter-offensive operation. Over the past 24 hours, Russian units have significantly expanded their zone of control along the entire perimeter of the Sujansky salient. This is the map we can observe today, by the end of March 10th. As you can see, some territories are marked under the control of Russian forces, others under the control of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, UAF, and some as contested areas. However, in any case, the progress is substantial. Just 3 days ago, on March 8th, we could see a very different map. Most of the territory was under the full control of the Ukrainian armed forces, but after the launch of the now legendary operation to land airborne troops behind Ukrainian positions, the map began to change rapidly. More precisely, the UAF front line collapsed, and Russian units advanced in all directions. Before we start discussing each section of the front at the Sujansky salient, I would like to say a few words about this already legendary airborne operation. Today, the organizers and participants of this operation shared some details and provided very interesting comments. According to one of the operation's organizers, 2 battalions of the Russian armed forces, 800 soldiers in total, participated in this mission. Furthermore, according to this source and open-source data, these 800 Russian soldiers remained inside pipes with a diameter of 1.5 meters for 4 days, waiting for the order to act. They stayed there with their gear, food and supplies, and once the order was given, they emerged near the railway and began advancing toward the industrial zone in the northeastern part of the Sujansky agglomeration. Once Russian units managed to clear the northeastern part, the entire front line along the perimeter of the Sujansky salient effectively collapsed. The UAF practically ceased resistance, and their subsequent actions were reduced to only a few maneuvers: retreating, regrouping, attempting to unblock their forces, and then further retreating, either toward the settlement of Sudzha or the state border. This situation is undoubtedly fascinating. This entire operation could even be called the Sujansky horse, but in this case, it would be more fitting to call it the Sujansky gas. The operation strongly resembles the legendary story of the Trojan horse from thousands of years ago. Only here, it was the Sujansky pipe. I remind you that it was Ukraine that a few months ago pushed for the termination of Russian gas transit through the Sujansky district and further through Sumy Oblast. Ukraine was the one that closed access for Russian gas to the European market. And now we see how Russian military command took advantage of this situation. First, they extracted the remaining gas, filled the pipes with oxygen, and sent their Sujansky horse into the Ukrainian rear. As a result, the entire front line collapsed. Now let's discuss everything in detail. We begin with the western, northwestern, and northern directions. According to the official Telegram channel of the Northern Troops Group and the Russian Ministry of Defense, over the past 24 hours, the Russian army has regained control over settlements such as Lokhnya, a small hamlet located north of Lebedevka and south of Nikolskoye, as well as the territory of the village of Malaya Lokhnya. Regarding Lokhnya itself, we have no objective control footage or additional evidence, only reports from the Ministry of Defense and the Northern Troops Group. However, when it comes to Malaya Lokhnya, 2 geolocation-confirmed videos from this section of the front have been published over the past 24 hours. In these Russian-released videos, we see a Russian soldier standing on the highest point in the settlement, raising the Russian tricolor flag. This flag was raised at this specific location in the village. A few hours later, another video was published from the southeastern part of the settlement, near the former women's colony. Here, 6 Russian soldiers also raised their flags and banners, representing the units directly involved in the battles in this direction. Based on these recordings, as well as reports from the Ministry of Defense and the Northern Troops Grouping, these territories have been marked as under the control of the Russian army. Additionally, throughout the day, a large number of different cartographers, both neutral and pro-Russian, published their updates on the front line. According to this information, all these fields, territories along the railway, and forested areas have also come under the control of the Russian Federation, although there are no objective control recordings yet to confirm this information. Moving to the northeastern direction, you can see that this area of the map has undergone the most significant changes. When it comes to this section of the front, most of the map updates are based on reports from both the Russian Ministry of Defense and the Northern Troops grouping. According to these reports, the settlement of Kosytsa has come under Russian army control, as well as the settlements of Pravda, Cherkasskaya Porechnaya, Ivashkovsky, and Kubatkin. Regarding Ivashkovsky, there is a brief video clip showing troop movement. The authors of the video claim that what we see is a Russian soldier advancing and clearing the settlement. The location was immediately geolocated, pinpointing the exact area where the Russian soldier was moving. Based on these recordings, the map was updated accordingly. Shortly after, additional control footage surfaced, showing the first Ukrainian soldiers surrendering at dawn on March 10th. Once it became clear to them that they were completely encircled and had no chance of breaking out, they began to lay down their arms. Additionally, news emerged about the clearing of the Kubatkin settlement. There is still no information regarding the village of Yuzhny. Most likely, by the end of March 10th, it will also come under Russian control. It also appears that a checkpoint was used for the evacuation of the remaining Ukrainian forces, first toward the settlement of Kazachya Loknya and then further south toward Zaulashinka. Most likely during the night of March 10th to 11th, the evacuation and breakout attempt of the Ukrainian formations from this section of the front will be completed. Those who fail to escape during the night will never be able to leave the encirclement. They will have only two choices: surrender or remain on this land forever. Now, we move to the eastern flank, toward the settlement of Martinovka. Russian sources have published control footage showing a Russian soldier waving flags in the central part of the settlement. Based on this footage, the entire settlement has been marked under Russian control. Shortly afterward, reports came from the Northern Troops grouping and other sources confirming that not only Martinovka, but also the nearby settlement of Mikhailovka had come under Russian control. Mikhailovka is a small suburb adjacent to Martinovka. Next, we move to the eastern direction. This section of the front has likely generated the largest number of updates over the past 24 hours. However, as you can see, most of these updates have not yet been confirmed by control footage, reports from the Ministry of Defense, or statements from the Northern Troops grouping. The only available footage shows the retreat of Ukrainian units, recorded by Russian reconnaissance. In these videos, we see several wooded areas near the settlement of Mirny, filled with Ukrainian soldiers. Pay attention to the dozens of figures along the tree line. These are Ukrainian troops, frozen in place, awaiting orders on whether to retreat or continue moving. The footage reveals that several kilometers of forest belts are packed with Ukrainian soldiers, waiting for a single command, either to advance or withdraw. These recordings were released alongside reports that Russian forces had expanded their zone of control in this area. According to unconfirmed reports, by the end of March 10th, the settlements of Bondarevka, Kolmakov, Mirny, and the entire eastern part of the Sujansky agglomeration, as well as Makhnovka, have come under full and firm control of the Russian armed forces. We are still awaiting geolocation confirmations, but it is expected that either later tonight or by tomorrow, the Ministry of Defense and the Northern Troops grouping will confirm this information. Now we move to the settlement of Sudzha itself. The town is under heavy fire. At the moment, the following situation is unfolding. Completely disorganized, chaotic, and in a state of panic, Ukrainian soldiers from all directions and all corners of the Sujansky salient are rushing towards Sudzha. This leads to a situation where the number of personnel per square meter in the city of Sudzha and the Sujansky agglomeration is extremely high. Naturally, this makes Sudzha a prime target for Russian FPV drone strikes, as nearly every building is now overcrowded with wounded soldiers and evacuation groups, many of whom, just hours ago, were in Martinovka or Kazachya Loknya. Now they are all concentrating in Sudzha, awaiting further orders to move toward the state border. From the border region, the first footage has already been published, showing Ukrainian units crossing on foot into Sumy Oblast. It is still too early to say whether the Ukrainian command has definitively decided to abandon Sudzha and the Sujansky agglomeration, but the first reports and control footage indicate that Ukraine will not mount a fierce defense of Sudzha or cling to the settlement. However, even if the Ukrainian side has made the decision to withdraw its forces, this does not mean that they will be able to do so with minimal losses. Regardless, the Russian side will continue counterattacks. Not only counterattacks, there will almost certainly be an attempt to encircle and eliminate the remaining units from the 80th, 81st, 82nd, 92nd, 47th, and 36th Ukrainian brigades, which have been stationed in the area for the past 6 months. Ukraine is expecting a large influx of retreating soldiers from Sudzha, who will likely continue to withdraw chaotically and along unorganized routes. At the moment, the Ukrainian command is focused on restoring infrastructure in Sumy Oblast. For example, in recent footage, Ukrainian engineering units are seen attempting to rebuild pontoon crossings in Sumy Oblast to facilitate the retreat of Ukrainian formations from the Sujansky district. However, Russian drones are actively monitoring almost every square kilometer. As soon as new engineering vehicles appear, they are immediately destroyed. That is the current situation, the events that unfolded on March 10, 2025. The Russian army continues its offensive. However, in addition to carrying out complex attack operations, new tasks have emerged: clearing the area, demining and handling prisoners of war, who are now surrendering by the dozens. Naturally, this could slow down overall progress in the coming days, unless the Russian command has already prepared a second wave of offensives. According to military logic, a second wave of assaults in the Sujansky sector should begin soon. The first wave, after 4 days of intense fighting and continuous marches, is likely exhausted. It is time to deploy reserves to push forward, potentially into Sumy Oblast itself. Now we move toward the northern Kupiansk direction, where a large amount of new information is coming in. Regarding this section of the front, Ukrainian sources claim that they hold the initiative. Currently, from Kupiansk, Ukrainian forces are counterattacking northeast toward Lyman-Pershai and Sinkivka. We fully understand this operation. The main objective of the Ukrainian armed forces is to cut off Russian units positioned on the Ukrainian side of the Oskil River from their supply lines and reinforcements. If Ukrainian forces manage to advance as far as Lyman-Pershai, there is a very high likelihood that Russian units will be forced to retreat back across the Oskil River, unless the situation is stabilized. Now we move to the Chasiv Yar, Toretsk front. Here, the situation remains largely unchanged. In Chasiv Yar, there has been a minor adjustment to the front line near the central citadel. Ukrainian sources have published control footage showing FPV drone strikes on Russian frontline positions. Some buildings were marked as under Russian control. On the Toretsk front, the situation is similar. After the initial successes of the Ukrainian offensive, the attack has stalled, lost momentum, or was never intended to be a full-scale advance. At the moment, Russian forces are gradually pushing back toward Kostiantynivka, reclaiming territory that had been lost in recent battles. Next, we move toward the Pokrovska direction. Here, the main battles are unfolding for the settlement of Shevchenko. Today, as you can see, the map has changed. Throughout the day, it has been updated multiple times. Just yesterday, we saw a different configuration. There were reports that the northern part of Shevchenko was under the control of the armed forces of Ukraine. Based on the available footage, we marked this territory as a contested zone. However, today, a large amount of objective control footage has clarified the situation. It confirms that the northern part of Shevchenko is indeed under Ukrainian control. There is a significant amount of visual evidence supporting this claim. We also see drone strikes targeting Ukrainian assault units. Additionally, there are several updates on the northwestern and eastern sections of the front. There is footage confirming constant counterstrikes by Russian forces. In the settlement of Dakhnaya, footage has emerged confirming the presence of Russian troops in the southeastern part, specifically within a small industrial complex. In these clips, we can see Ukrainian units retreating from this section of the town after yet another attack by Russian forces. There may have been an attempt to advance, but it was unsuccessful, and we now observe a retreat. Based on this footage, we can conclude that the industrial complex is under Russian control, and the map has been updated in favor of Russian forces. Now we move toward the southern Donetsk direction. Today, the pro-Ukrainian cartographic service Deep State published a very interesting article claiming that the settlement of Constantinople is almost entirely under Ukrainian control. However, just yesterday, at least a dozen videos were released, showing Russian soldiers raising Russian flags in various parts of Constantinople, including the southwestern, central, and northwestern areas. One would think that such clear evidence should be sufficient. These were not just dropped flags from drones, they were physically placed on the ground. Yet, for the Ukrainian military and their sources, this footage was not enough. They claimed that this was all a staged fabrication by Russian soldiers. According to their version, a few Russian fighters managed to break through Ukrainian defensive lines, plant flags, and then retreat. That's the story Ukrainian propaganda is telling today. And what do you think about this? Leave your opinion in the comments. That's all for today. Subscribe to the channel and stay connected.